The poles went up in a wet march before the ground had dried enough to turn. A woman of 35, working alone at the top of a young orchard, sinking fir posts 12 feet tall and bolting a plain crossbar near the top of each one. Astrid Solberg. She wore her father's old rain slicker that hung loose off her shoulders, and rubber boots gone soft at the ankle, and she set those posts in a long, straight line where good apple trees might have gone instead. Trucks slowed on bracken roads so people could look. Tall poles with nothing on them. No wire, no birdhouse, no fruit, no shade, no reason a farmer could name. And she would not say what they were for. When Gunnar Haugen leaned out his window and called, "What are those for, Astrid?" she only said, "Some place to sit," and went back to her auger. Nobody in the valley knew what she was after. Inside of 2 years, they would. If stories of quiet wisdom, of patience, and of the old true lessons of the land mean something to you, take a moment now to subscribe. Leave a comment and tell us the name of the town or the county where you are watching from tonight. It matters to us more than you might think. The Solberg place sat in the low green hills at the east edge of the valley, 40 acres of orchard and hay ground that a Norwegian family had cleared and planted in 1907. It had passed down 3 times since. Astrid ran it now with her father, Niels, who was past 70 and slow in the mornings and still up before her most days. Her mother, Ruth, kept a kitchen garden and ground so full of river rock that nothing had a right to grow there, and it grew anyway. Astrid had always been the kind who watched. She was no prodigy, no genius of the soil, only patient. As a girl, she knew which corner of the low field took the frost first, and could tell a coming rain by how low the swallows cut over the hay. She noticed things other people walked straight past. A flattened patch of grass where a hawk liked to feed. The way the ground under a certain dead tree stayed smooth and open, while the field around it was cut through with little runways no wider than a thumb. Word of the poles got around the way things do. At the feed store, they called it Astrid's fence for the birds. "She's fencing in the sky," somebody said, and it got a laugh, and it was still funny the next week. It was not meanness in any of them. They simply could not find the sense in it, and a thing with no sense in it is easy to laugh at. Her own brother, Carl, said it plainest, standing at the end of a row with his hands in his pockets. "They're just poles, Astrid. The voles will come or they won't, and no stick in the ground is going to change their minds." She didn't argue. Nils said nothing at all. He looked down the line of poles a long while, then went back to the barn. She had not read it in any book. She had worked it out for herself over years without meaning to. There was a dead cottonwood snag at the bottom of the far field, and a red-tailed hawk had used it as long as she could remember. Astrid had watched that bird 100 times, dropping off the snag, sailing low, folding, striking. And one dry August she walked the ground beneath it and found something she never forgot. All around, the field was honeycombed with vole runs, the grass eaten to the dirt in places. But for 40 or 50 feet out from that snag, the ground was clean, smooth as a swept floor. The hawk sat there, and the voles did not. It was so simple it had taken her years to trust it. The birds that eat voles hunt from high places. They need a perch to watch from and a hollow to nest in. Give them both, all across your ground, and you do not fight the voles at all. You let something else fight them, the way it always has. That was the whole of it, and it was not magic. A hawk hunts by sitting still and watching, and a bare field gives it nowhere to sit. Raise a perch every few hundred feet, and you hand the field back to the hawks. put up a nest box, and a pair of barn owls will move in. And one family of barn owls will take more than 1,000 voles across a single nesting season. Owls and kestrels and harriers do for nothing what no trap ever quite manages, and they do it every night without being asked. It did not work the first year. That was the hard part. The first winter the poles stood empty, wet and black in the rain, and not one hawk came to sit on them. Gunnar had a fine time with that. But Astrid had watched enough to guess the trouble. The birds had nowhere to raise young. So in the spring she built nest boxes, 4 for barn owls and 2 for kestrels, and set them high on the poles and on the north wall of the barn. Then starlings took a box before the owls could. She pulled the nest out, screwed a baffle over the hole to keep the wrong birds off, and waited. A March wind toppled a pole she had not set deep enough, and she dug the hole again, deeper this time. That was the morning she came out to find Niels already there in the wet grass, leaning on the post hole digger, the hole half sunk before she reached him. He never said a word about it. He handed her the tool and steadied the pole while she tamped. There was a stretch that second summer when she wondered if Carl was right. The voles seemed few, the poles mostly bare, and a person starts to feel foolish standing up for nothing. She kept building anyway. Then, late in the second summer, a pair of barn owls found a box. A kestrel took another. The redtail from the old snag began working the new poles, closer to the trees now, and a second hawk came in behind it. By fall, there was almost always a bird somewhere on the line, still and watching. Nobody driving past thought a thing of it. A hawk on a pole is the most ordinary sight in the country. The 2 winters that followed came in wet and mild, with no hard freeze to knock anything back. Grass grew thick and stayed green in January. And in ground like that, in a warm, wet stretch, the voles do not simply live, they multiply past all counting. Nils had seen it once before. He remembered the year the voles took the Fenwick orchard, 1972. Whole young trees killed in one winter, and he began watching the fields the way his daughter did. By that spring you could see it if you knew to look. The hay ground was laced with fresh runways. The county extension office sent a notice warning of a vole year, the worst in a lifetime. The night before it broke, Astrid walked her orchard rows with a lantern, checking the base of every young tree, and found the bark whole and the ground quiet. It came on in June, and it came fast. The voles moved out of the hayfields and into the orchards for the bark, and they took the young trees at the root collar, wringing them clean under cover of the tall grass. Gunnar Haugen had put in a new block of apples the year before, near 2,000 trees, his pride and his future. He walked those rows on a bright June morning and found them wilting, every leaf gone limp at once. And when he pulled at a sapling, it came up dead in his hand, chewed through at the ground. He lost near 80 of every 100 trees in that block. Down the road, the Fenwick hayfield had been eaten to the roots and lay honeycombed and sunken, not worth the diesel to run a mower over. Astrid's orchard stood, not untouched. She would never say untouched. She lost a few young trees at the low corner past the last pole, where no bird liked to hunt. But walk her rows that June, and the thing was plain in the ground itself. The floor of her orchard lay smooth and open, swept clean of runways, just like the dirt under that old snag years before. The birds had worked every night while the valley laughed, and the voles had never been let to rise. The first to understand what he was seeing was not a neighbor. It was Otto Lindqvist, the man the extension office sent to tally the damage. He stopped at her fence to write down another ruined orchard, and stood there instead a long time, looking from the smooth ground to the poles to the owl box on the barn. He asked her one thing. "How far apart did you set them?" She told him. He walked the line, counting his paces between the poles, and drew the shape of the crossbar in the back of his field book, careful to get the angle right. After that, they came on their own. Gunnar walked over one evening, mud to the knee from his own dead rose, and stood at her fence with little to say. He looked at the poles a good while. By the next spring, there were bare poles going up on 3 farms along Bracken Road, and owl boxes on barn walls where there had never been any. No one announced it. Astrid never once said that she had told them so. She used to say that the land keeps its own books, and it never settles the account on the day you ask. You do the work, and you wait, and years later it pays you back in a coin you did not know you had earned. The real harvest was never the apples. It was the balance that came back to that ground, the quiet in the grass, the birds that stayed and kept it. She had not beaten the voles. She had only stepped aside and let the field remember how to defend itself. Astrid Solberg is 39 now, and the orchard is hers alone since her father slowed. There are 11 poles on the home place, and more going up every year, and a pair of barn owls that has nested in the same box for 4 seasons running. On a still evening, she will stand at the top of the orchard and count the birds on the line, and she does not have to explain it to anybody anymore. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this story stayed with you, tell us in the comments about someone you knew who saw a thing early, before the rest of us did. Subscribe, and stay a while. There is always another one coming.